Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. And then if some other people join, great. And we'll just keep it rolling. So I want to say thank you for Progressive Democrats of Howard County for hosting this and continuing to promote discussions that focus on campaign finance, where money is coming from for candidates, new candidates, current elected officials, other sources of money for campaigns. It's a really important discussion. And I think a lot of us always have the questions of why did a certain thing happen legislatively or otherwise? And we just don't know all the details. And part of the reason is the money or who maybe in the highest level positions who have a lot of influence over legislation. Who did they get money from and how all of that's kind of swirling around. So a bit more about my background. I've worked on political campaigns. I am a former staff member for Howard County Council member Liz Walsh, who is fabulous. And when she ran for office, decided that she was not going to accept any campaign donation from the land developer lobby. And I think her and some other folks set a strong precedent as far as that is concerned. And I think we're definitely seeing other people do the same now for this election cycle. And hopefully we'll continue to see that. But that's just a little bit more about me. And, I started looking into campaign finance reports years ago, and that was partly inspired by me seeing journalists talk about, how much money does a candidate have on hand? I'm like, well, where do they find this? Like, I want to know where this is. I want to know who's donating. I see in this article that, this candidate or elected official got a donation from this organization. Well, I just want to see it. Where is it? So that is how I started a pretty self-taught process of just trying to find this stuff. So I will go ahead and share my screen and we'll start looking at campaign finance reports in Maryland. All right, hold on. Where'd it go? Karen, I think I just saw that I had the option. Where'd it go? Hold on.
You should definitely be able to.
Okay, it might just be me. Oh, there it is. It's back. I don't know where it went. Okay. Okay. So let me do this. Okay, can everyone see that? We're just on like this general Zoom one. I'm gonna open up a new tab. So
yep, I can see it.
And so the easiest place to start, if you can't remember anything else, just type into Google campaign finance Maryland. That'll get you going on the right foot. So I'm going to type in campaign finance Maryland. Boom. All right, gonna do this. Gonna minimize the Zoom. Okay, so what do you see first? Great. elections.maryland.gov. Click on campaign finance. So this is where I spend a lot of time. This is a really great web page to launch from when you're trying to find information regarding donations, filed campaign finance reports, timelines, that sort of thing. So there actually are a couple of videos here that are helpful. This one's maybe about 8 to 10 minutes if you wanted to sit down and absorb some more information. There are a couple of those here. A bit more about if you are a part of a campaign and are tasked or responsible for filing a report, that information is within these videos and some more. One thing I want to point out on the sidebar here when it comes to a reporting schedule. So during an election year, candidates have to file campaign finance reports more often. When it's not an election year, they only have to file them in January, which is interesting given that they're taking or accepting money all the time, right? So, if there's a vote that's happening on something, I'm talking more about the local level because at the state level, delegates, senators, they can't accept money during the Maryland state legislative session, but they sure can accept a lot of money leading up to that. But real quick, I'll just click on this. This is a reporting schedule for 2022. This year, like in other years, candidates have to file a report in January, which is what you see here. This 2022 annual report. This spring report here is just if you didn't have to file one in January. But before the primary, candidates have to file a couple of reports. Interestingly, this year, I believe the first day of early voting is July 7th. So this is a very interesting date here that I'm going to reach out to the State Board of Elections about, because I think candidates should really be filing this second report before early voting starts. But anyway, as you can see, they have to file a report in June. They've got to file another one in July. If they're continuing on with their campaign after the primary, they need to file one in August, again in October, and then one after the general as well. So I want you to just keep that in mind. That information is here. And honestly, I wish that candidates had to file more often when it isn't an election year. Because again, if we're talking about a county council, they're voting on their legislative sessions are relatively constant, aside from, maybe a December break or some other break that they're taking from their legislative sessions. So that's that information. I want to go back to where we started on this page. So what I use the most often is in this section right up here. These links are really, really handy. The ones that I use the most are contributions. So maybe you're like, there's this particular organization or entity that I have in mind, or even a particular name of a person I have in mind, and I want to input their name. I want to see if they've donated to anybody recently, 10 years ago. If you want to look at someone's entire filed campaign finance report, which will include how much cash they have on hand, it will include their expenditures, it will include if they've transferred money anywhere to another campaign committee. If you want to look at those, you would click on this here. It says reviewed filed reports submitted by campaign finance entities. So I use these a lot. Expenditures, looking at expenditures, also really fascinating to see what a campaign has spent its money on. Who have they spent that money on? That can include a lot of consulting services. Of course, people are purchasing campaign lit, but sometimes there'll be some stuff in there that's interesting. So I want to stop for questions thus far. Anybody have any questions? I see that there's something in the chat. Anything? Or I'll just keep going. Okay. So what I'll do first is I'm going to click on contributions. Let me go there. Next page. This has some good information on it. This is a summary of essentially what some definitions are and how much can somebody donate. So down here, well, obviously you see a contribution is considered definition, a transfer. Good information here about transfers because candidates can transfer money from their accounts to other campaign committees, other candidates running for office. They can donate to something like the Maryland House Democratic Caucus. They can transfer it to someone else who's running in their county or their city. they can do that. A loan, what you often see with loans is candidates loaning themselves money, loaning their campaign money. That's, I would say, not particularly controversial there. But down here is really important information. So a person may contribute directly or indirectly no more than $6,000 to any one political committee. So I could give $6,000 to, a candidate who's running, anywhere in the state of Maryland. If I wanted to, I could give them $1,000. I could give them $50. But I can't exceed a total of $24,000 to political committees. So if I wanted to give someone the max of $6,000, I could donate that to 4 different political committees. I can't do any more than that. I could also give 24 different committees $1,000 if I wanted to, but you can't go over this. And I'll illustrate some examples of where that has happened. Where entities have gone over this. But also a really important note, this is during the 4-year election cycle. That's over the course of 4 years. Like I can't give them $6,000, let's say, in the first year of their term, and then, give them $6,000 the next year and the next year. No, it's $6,000 during a 4-year election cycle. And this cap of 24,000 is the same. And then you have this information here. A political committee may transfer no more than $6,000 to another political committee during that cycle. But there's no aggregate limit. All right, any questions there? Feel free to.
Hey, Nicole, so in a political committee, it says can transfer. So if I'm a PAC, I can give another PAC $6,000 and another PAC $6,000. And I can do that as many times as I want to different entities, not a single entity, but different entities, unlimited.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
For committee, does that mean, like, I just wrote this in the note, the committee to re-elect Katie Hester, so committee equals candidate?
Yes, to one political committee, because you could also be, you could also have a PAC that could also be considered a political committee, to my understanding.
Can you
But then also a slate.
Sorry, Nicole, I know that people set up I'm a committee, so I'm running for something and I set up a committee, Friends of Karen Emery. But I could also have a PAC, right? Are those two, like, you could give 6,000 to my PAC and 6,000 to me, or does that?
That's a good question. I don't know. I would expect, I don't know. I don't know that you can set up a PAC in addition to your candidate committee.
Okay.
That would be interesting.
Okay, well, a PAC is made up of people, right? Or it could be a union or something like that.
It certainly could be, yes.
Yeah.
So I could give individually $6,000 to, let's say, Nuveen Curtin, and then I could be part of a land developer's PAC, and I could also give $6,000 to her. Sure.
Well, so when you say part, you mean you're saying I, can donate $6,000 to this PAC, and I could donate, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So in other words, there's endless loopholes to this. This is a meaningless.
Yeah. I mean, and we're just talking about hard cash, right? That's actually on paper somewhere. I mean, I could certainly by myself say, you know what, I would really like to create or help. It's one example I'll use is, like, let's say I had a business, I had a restaurant, or I had a space that I would let a candidate use for their fundraiser, where they get to meet people who want to donate to them, and they get to, have conversations and all those other things. But
isn't that counted as an in-kind?
It's not always listed. No.
Okay.
Mm-mm. But we'll definitely get more into that. But to answer your question, Lori, yeah, I mean, today I could give, $4,000 to a PAC that's donating to a number of different individuals. I could myself give $1,000 directly to a candidate committee. I could donate to, trying to think of other examples. I could donate to the state party. I could donate to a state party. I could donate to a local party who in turn will, spend that money in various ways for particular candidates, maybe in the form of canvassing or just send that, transfer that to candidates directly.
Okay.
All sorts of ways, but it's hard to track. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. All right, so I am going to click on this button that says continue. And so we end up on what essentially is a search engine for this information. This is not, I think this is a good search. I'm calling it a search engine to have, but it's similar to any other sort of search you would do for anything else. It's particular. You gotta, I've spent a lot of time in here trying to figure out like, okay, this is the information I'm searching for. How do I get there? What does this search engine want of me? Because you might insert some term, some language, and that might not get you what you want, but you might insert something else and it does. So the main parts of this page are contributor. This is it says last name, first name. Sometimes I'll just interchange and, like, oh, well, if I put one word here or there, what works? Especially if it's not an individual's name, but an organization's name. You can pick what receiving campaign committee. You're like, I want to search and see if this particular person has donated to this candidate. You can search that, and I'll fill this in shortly to provide some examples. You can search, do you want to see who's donated to someone from a certain city or a street, zip code? I use this information on the right a lot because this has, you can search between certain dates. So if you're searching for the current election cycle, so we just talked about how there are limits as to what someone can contribute during a particular election cycle. Our current election cycle started for when it comes to campaign finance. That is the beginning of 2019. It doesn't start after the general election. I thought that for a while. I was like, oh, I'll search for, like December 2018. Nope. You want to start January 2019. And then you can choose up until this date. You could choose up until, February if you wanted to capture the January regularly filed January reports. But what I do is I'm just like, I'll just pick now. So put that there. You can search. You don't even have to fill in the date if you don't want to. If you want to say, I want to see what a particular individual has contributed since campaign reports were online and I can find it. You can do that too. You can search from 2010, whatever you want. And then down here, you can pick a starting amount. So what I generally start with is $1,000. You can certainly check to see, like, has someone given, who above $250 has given. But what I will usually do is I'll start with 1,000 because I think, those people are like, I assume I'm getting something from this. That doesn't mean someone who donates $500 doesn't expect that. But then what I'll use as my biggest number, I'll just choose something really huge because I also want to capture the people who are abusing campaign finance laws or just potentially transferring a lot of money. But you always want to fill in this second box as well. And then I'll provide an example as to why. So what I'm going to do first is I know that locally in Howard County, some of us, we talk about Howard Hughes Corporation on a regular basis. And I'm going to use them as an example here because they donate to a lot of different people and also entities, and they've also used campaign finance law. They just provide a lot of material to work with, what can I say, for educational purposes. So the name that they donate under a lot is Howard Research. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put over here, you know what, I want to see any donations between $1,000 and $100,000. And I'm searching again in the current election cycle. I just want to see what comes up. So I'm going to hit search, and this is what comes up. So you'll see they've donated to a lot of different electeds. You can see here Guy Guzzoni, senator in Howard County. You've seen they donated to the Democratic Senate Caucus Committee. So the state Senate has a caucus committee, the state House has a caucus committee, and that's different from, the Maryland, a Democratic Party, and the local Democratic parties. You can also see in different jurisdictions they've donated. They've got some money to burn, and they're going to burn it. Down here, you've got a couple different pages of information. So this, I want to point this out, the Democratic State Central Committee of Maryland, this is the state Democratic Party. When I've tried to search for, the state Democratic Party, like using that term, it doesn't come up when you're trying to find them in here. So this is the name that they go by. And Howard Hughes gave them $10,000. So Howard Hughes, I think suffice it to say, Howard Hughes, just like any other entity donating this amount of money, they expect something in return for that money. But of course, this money can then be spent all over the state of Maryland.
But isn't this more than $6,000?
Correct. Yep.
So this is technically illegal.
Yes.
Oh. And what happens if somebody calls them on it?
I have informed the State Board of Elections about this. So I'll let you know what they say, but right now the State Board of Elections doesn't have a lot to say about it.
Oh, interesting.
It is.
And this is just one of many sort of entities that Howard Hughes uses to make donations, right?
As far as we can tell, yeah. So unless someone tells me like, oh, like Howard Hughes can donate, I don't know what in the law would be some sort of loophole that allows them to donate this much to the state party, in addition to all the other donations that they've made, because this is a political committee, and Howard Research and Development Corps, I've looked for them. This is not a political committee. They're not a PAC.
Do they donate to Republicans?
They do. Interesting. Okay, so if I were to go back to include in my dates the previous election cycle, so
okay.
I'm just going back a couple years. I could go back to the beginning of 2015, but I'm just going to go back to 2017 up until now, and I'm going to hit search again. And they donated $15,000 here to the Howard County Republican Central Committee, and they also donated another, again, $20,000 to the Republican Central Committee. That's a lot of money.
I think the justification that I've seen used for why they can just so blatantly overspend the $6,000 legal limit, and I think to answer the question earlier, like, can you contribute to a candidate committee, a slate, a PAC, et cetera? I think it might be like any one entity is capped out at like $24,000 cumulatively among all the different entities. But the justification that I've seen is, I think like the United States Supreme Court said that like caps on spending are unconstitutional. So they're going to say, even though
Okay.
this is Maryland state law, the Supreme Court has found it unconstitutional, and therefore they don't have to abide by it. I would guess that that is going to be the rationale.
Well, we'll see. I'll keep everyone informed as to what the State Board of Elections has to say about this because they're aware. And then it will be interesting to see what happens. Are you there? Okay.
Hey,
Could everybody mute, please,
yeah,
if they're not
thank you.
speaking?
yeah, I think when Ruth joined, she might not have joined on mute. So Ruth, if you can mute.
Okay. So any other questions here? I'm gonna do something else just to illustrate how this particular search works. If you just left this area blank over here, so I started with $1,000, but if I were to just hit search, it's only going to pull up the $1,000 donations. You've got to put something else here if you're trying to capture $1,000 donations and above. I mean, and you can put in $7,000. You put in any other number there that you would like, and then it's going to give you the information up to the number that you put in, but you've got to put something in over here. Otherwise, it's just going to pull, like if I put in $500, like it's only going to pull those. But as Jake was saying, I think it was Jake, you know, you could have entities who are trying to actively get around restrictions that they perceive or that are real. They might donate under other names as well. Even if it's a slightly different name, you might be able to capture also if a lot of donations are coming on, excuse me, coming from one address, but maybe it's a bunch of names, maybe it's a building with a bunch of suites. So just to illustrate that, I'm just going to type in Howard Hughes, but I'm going to go back to the current election cycle, and I want to see anything over $1,000 up until $100,000. Wait, so they've got Howard Hughes Corporation, another $2,500. But, and I didn't find this information. Some other folks did. So this address that they're using, this Little Patuxent Parkway, Suite 400. Okay, that's interesting. Also, same address, same suite number. Also sending out some big checks. Pretty interesting. Oh, look, a check for $20,000 to, this is the Democratic Senate Caucus Committee of Maryland. So like I said, the state Senate has a Democratic Caucus Committee, and the state House has a Democratic Caucus Committee. And so if we're going to assume that this is also Howard Hughes donating under the very interesting name of just Columbia, they donated $20,000 to the Democratic Caucus Committee. So they're sending out quite a lot of money. And again, when you're sending out this amount of money, you definitely expect things in return, and people need to know what that is. So if you see, you know, if you're following any piece of legislation closely, you know when the legislation doesn't pass, you might be aware of some amendments that are filed that weaken the legislation. But not everybody knows what's gone into that, and you might have candidates or in this case, elected officials who are voting on that legislation who give an explanation, a public explanation as to why, but that might not be the real reason.
Nicole?
Because
Nicole,
there's, what's that?
I got a question here. Going
Yeah.
back to these fascinating names, Columbia,
Yeah.
Howard Hughes Corporation, Howard, whatever the other phony baloney names are. I mean, they must have accounts. They must have this money squirreled away under those names somewhere. Do they not?
Well, I mean, I'd need to see, I'd love to see the checks.
Yeah.
I would
Okay.
love to see that. So is it all the same? Is it all the same bank account? I don't know. Are these different bank accounts? I don't know.
It's the same address, though, but that much we know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's one way to search. Another way that you can search, let's say you want to see, you know, donations that were made within a certain range to a particular candidate who may or may not be also a current elected official. I can pull up any committee here. I'm going to pull up Guy Gazzoni's only because he's local, obviously, to Howard County as far as being a senator from here, but then also he's got a ton of money. So we're going to pull that up. So again, this is if you were to start typing in a name for someone, then the search engine is like, I think you might, are you trying to search for this person? And then you can click on that. So you could just say, oh, okay, I'm going to do that. And so this is the sort of information that comes up when you see that. You can, of course, change the dates. You could change the amounts. You could even choose, you know, okay, what city are they located in when you're searching for that information. So those are the basics of how to use this particular, or how one can use this particular page. One other thing I want to illustrate before I move on to actually looking at someone's full filed campaign finance report is also looking at lobbyists who donate. So Howard Hughes has a fairly long list of lobbyists who are listed for Howard County within the the Office of Law. So I am going to pull up one of them. And we'll just see how much money he's donated. So this is one of the lobbyists for Howard Hughes. His name is Damian O'Doherty. And this is another way that entities can get money to elected officials without donating in their own name. So their lobbyists can donate too. And some candidates will accept money from lobbyists and some won't. Some candidates will accept money from the land developer lobby and some won't. So this is another thing to keep in mind when you're looking at this. And I definitely want everyone in any jurisdiction to feel empowered to look at these because, you know, I don't know who all of the lobbyists are everywhere. But people who live in particular locations, Baltimore County, Baltimore City, Anne Arundel County, Montgomery County, and cities within those, they're going to know what some of these names are. And they're going to have more familiarity with the entities and the individuals who are there in ways that I'm not going to know. Like I could see a donation from Joe Smith, but I don't know. I don't have any context, but someone could see that name, someone could see an address, someone could see an employer name here that I don't know anything about and be able to connect the dots. So it's really important that everyone everywhere, I would love for this to happen, to be familiar with how to search for this information because I'm not going to be able to connect the same dots that someone else would. But I want people to be aware that this is, you know, donations are made in the name of specific organizations. Donations are made from their lobbyists. And that's going to be a lot more money and more influence than maybe a $25 donation that I would make or that you would make. So.
Hey, Nicole, Paul has his hand up. Before we get to
Yes.
Paul though, do you remember years and years and years ago, Al Gore got into a lot of trouble with, I think it was some Buddhist nuns or something like that, where somebody had given the nuns money and then the nuns donated to his campaign. And that was considered money laundering and illegal. And it seems to me that if you're a lobbyist, I don't know what all the campaign finance laws, so I'm just asking. But if I'm Damien O'Doherty and I'm being paid by the Howard Hughes Corporation as a lobbyist, and then I make a donation, that seems like money laundering. I mean,
yeah,
maybe I'm
I mean,
wrong. Maybe I'm
I
wrong,
don't
maybe the
like
law
it.
states it differently, but
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't like it. As far as I know, there has been legislation at the state level to make it such that lobbyists can't donate. And that legislation has not passed.
Okay.
If that helps answer your question. So
yeah,
as far as I know, lobbyists still have to work within the same caps of $6,000 to any one entity and $24,000 overall. Unless there's a loophole there for them that I'm
Right.
not aware of. So yeah, but I certainly am of the opinion that they should not be able to donate. There are too many ways to get a lot of money to elected officials by very few people.
so Paul has his hand up and then Lori has her hand up, I think.
Yes.
I was just fascinated here. Thank you, Nicole. Looking at this, that Damien O'Doherty seems to have at least two addresses, three
Four.
employers.
He has four
and it's
addresses.
Yeah, and it's mostly by credit card. I mean, I think this is really fascinating. I mean,
Yeah.
how does he explain three employers and multiple addresses? I guess he doesn't have to explain it. That's the answer, huh?
Yeah. So one thing that I'll say about this, yes, it's an issue for sure. And I don't know to the extent that the State Board of Elections knows that this is happening. What do they do after they know that it's happening? What sort of penalties are involved? I don't know yet. I'll certainly keep you informed as I know more information. But it's it's definitely an issue for sure.
I am fascinated by the fact that the employer name has changed and the employer occupation changes. And I think that O'Doherty owns his own company, and yet he's filing as an individual. And I think the reason why the occupation is different is he's a consulting firm, and so he provides different services.
Yeah,
but that shouldn't be allowed.
I think we could also find, we could probably also find donations, maybe not that, hold on. You can also find donations directly by KO Public Affairs. So there's that as well. So many ways, it's just spinning. So, I mean, of course, I'm illustrating this, and I think there are a lot of people on the call who are on the same page already as far as this as an example to really underscore the importance of small donor campaigns and specifically public financing when that's available, because we know that's, not available to every different level of elected official in Maryland yet. But for the cases where that is available to the elected candidates to use it. There are caps on how much money that they can take to people, and it's a lot less than $1,000. And then they can also choose to. There are far more restrictions on who they can accept money from, how much they can't accept money from local parties, Republican, Democrat, either, PACs. So, this is just one example of one organization trying to really get as much influence out there as they can. They're not alone. There are other examples, of, maybe a family of 5 different people who own a construction company, and they're all donating individually, or it's a restaurant group, something like that. Howard Hughes isn't the only one. It's a problem. And I also want to mention again that it's not just the hard cash. The hard cash matters for sure. But, to some of these organizations, $6,000 is not a lot of money. $100,000 is maybe, of course, it's more money, but it still might not be a lot of money to them. So then you have to ask, like, what else? What are both parties getting, essentially? When I say parties, I'm talking about the receiver of the donation and the person who's donating. What are they getting? Is it, oh, we're going to throw a fundraiser, and I, the person who has a ton of money, I'm going to introduce you to 10 other people who have a ton of money and influence and power. So the cash matters, but it's not just the cash. There's a lot of other stuff going on there. And I couldn't tell you what all of those things are, but I'm sure you imagine what they are.
Hey, Nicole, you may not be able to answer this, but I remember in 2020 or 2018 rather, everyone felt on the Democratic side that Calvin Ball was not going to win the election against Kittleman. And then what I heard from people kind of in the know was that at the last minute, the developers stepped in with an infusion of cash to pump up his campaign. And that's what helped put him over the top. I didn't understand. I was like, at the time, I didn't understand how that last minute infusion of cash from the developers could actually push him over the top. Because as Harry said at the beginning, when we were first just chit-chatting before we started the session, the voters are the ones voting. But was it just in him being able to better get the word out? How did that make a difference, do you think, for Calvin Ball to win? Or was it just a misstep in people understanding that he actually was going to win?
Good question. So I worked in Howard County on the Democratic coordinated campaign. I was paid by the state Democratic Party to knock doors in Howard County. And I was very invested in making sure that Democrats were elected. I've certainly been disappointed by some of them since then, no question. But specifically when it comes to the county executive's race, I haven't done a comparison to see who did both candidates, Calvin Ball, now county executive Calvin Ball, and then at that time county executive Alan Kittleman. I don't know how that breaks down as far as, like, did one get more donations from the developer than another? Because, the developers they're going to give, some of them are going to give money to both, right? They might be invested in one candidate more than another, but I think if you were to, at the end of the day, look at both, there was a lot of developer money that went into both campaigns, and how that might differ as far as did one of them get more, I don't know. And honestly, it would take me a lot of time, because you also have people donating from LLCs that have just like, Green Street LLC. What is that? Like, is that a developer? Who is that? We don't know. That would certainly take some time. So as far as, what put Calvin Ball over the edge, in terms of the number of votes they got, I don't know that it was any one thing. I think there's certainly a lot of momentum behind Democrats that year, from a national perspective, and that most certainly helps them. But as far as, the cash, when it comes to county executive races, those are $1 million campaigns, and some people argue, well, you've got to, like, if you want to put out like a TV ad, if you want to, you've got to have some cash, you've got to, at least, have campaign lit, those sort of things. So would Calvin Ball have been able to win with far less money is an excellent question.
Right.
When we look at the county council race that year, Liz Walsh, who again, I'm a former staff member for, full disclosure, had far less money than John Weinstein, but she won. It was very, very close. It was very close. They did a recount. They did a recount for the primary. It was close, but she won. So I think your message also, without question, has to resonate, you know? And I think that hers did. She did. She was public about the fact that she was not going to accept money from the land developers. And I think that clearly resonated with some people. Other people, you know, voted for based on different reasons, or many. So it's an excellent question. It's fascinating, all of it.
Hey, Oscar, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I just had a two-part question, and I apologize for coming late to the party. It sounds really super fascinating. I'd love to be able to hear the beginning of it. However, this looks like this database or this information can be downloaded to Excel, and from Excel you can parse it, right? So anybody that has a lot of or some knowledge in database handling can download. And I've done this before with other kinds of information and parse it and sort it. And Excel happens to be a very useful tool. The second part is that I'm blown away that the state Board of Elections seems to not be aware of this happening. Meaning things slipping through the cracks, like you mentioned before, multiple folks. One of the things I find helpful when I'm approaching state board of election officials that are in charge of doing these kinds of things is approaching them in a manner that, like, hey, I'm running for office. I'd like to be able to do this thing. I want to make sure I understand the rules. Help me understand why X, Y, Z can do this and how I can do the same thing while I'm running for office. And it's amazing how forthcoming they are about all the loopholes that they are available. And so as I would imagine that somewhere along the line, somebody has approached State Board of Elections with the same kind of questions and why it's still going on. It seems to me they're very sensitive about redoing the same mistake again. So, but who knows in Maryland?
Yeah, I'm certainly interested in knowing more from the State Board of Elections around, what does their process look like on a regular basis to find these things? Are they relying on, the public to, or otherwise, to point out specific things? Do they have a lot of staff or enough staff to look at these things? Are they very intentionally, or perhaps, based on funding, are they understaffed? I don't know what that looks like in detail yet, but I will continue letting them know what I find and asking questions about it. Talking about it in public forums, putting it on social media to put pressure there as well. And back to what you were saying in the beginning, for those who are interested, he's very correct. Thank you for pointing this out. Over in this part of the screen, if you do want to export information in a CSV, Excel file, PDF, Word, that option is over here in this menu. So thank you for pointing that out. It's very helpful. Anything else before we continue? I know we're kind of coming up on an hour, but I do want to share.
I saw Taya had some questions about the publicly matched financing system, like the CEF and whatnot.
Okay. I'm reading a chat. Maryland per would create. There was a push to get campaigns funded by public dollars by Maryland PERG. Are there any updates in that area? So Maryland PERG would create a new fair election fund where local candidates can only accept donations from individuals up to $250 and must refuse donations, right, from political action committees, corporations. Has this stalled out? So great question. Montgomery County was a leader in this, and definitely, I think, with a lot of support, if not, initial movement by Marilyn Perg. I'm assuming also Common Cause Maryland and some other organizations. So Montgomery County has had at least one election cycle already where their county council and county executive candidates could take advantage of public funding. I believe the first election that was available was 2018, maybe it was 2014. So as far as I know, they were first out the gate at this within the state of Maryland. And then Prince George's County also legislatively passed a public finance legislation, but I don't think that it's been funded, which is an issue. So you got to fund it, like, so you can legally create the structure, but you got to fund it. Maybe that's changed in the recent past, and Prince George's County has put some money into their fund, but I'm not sure. Howard County passed legislation for that. Was that in 2018? So this is the first election cycle where county council candidates and county executive candidates can take advantage of that. And then I believe there's something also available to governor candidates, but I have not looked into the details of that. I think that's the extent of what exists currently. And in Baltimore County, they're making movements as well, maybe ironing out their legislation. I don't know if that's, I remember something about them creating committees to work on all of that. But it's a great question. That is such amazing work by the organizations who have pushed and individuals who've pushed for that. And one idea or one part of all that process is to make candidacy or the idea of running as a candidate more accessible to those who don't have these, friends with $1,000 to spare, or really connected to this, that, and the other thing. And I know so many people who could just give me a whole bunch of money for my campaign. So there's that, and then also eliminating the influence of these big money players who can afford to write you a $6,000 check, and to also have a candidate go out and actually do more engagement with the community that they are, running to serve, like $5 from this person, $10 from another person, because you can't have a fundraiser where you're taking $1,000 checks. You can't. That's the terms of the law. So you in practice, like, if you didn't already want to go out and meet and solicit $5 donations from the people in your district, like, you've got to, like, you can't get these big checks. So and that's the point. That's what people should be doing from the jump, like votes from their community, not $6,000 checks from maybe 10 developers in their community. Does that help? Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. There are definitely people who know more about that I do. Obviously, Marilyn Perg has wrote the book, helped write the book, other organizations, and I'm just here as a very happy person that they did that, and very grateful that they did.
I do want to say one thing real quick about the public finance system. And yes, it is a big step in the right direction. In Howard County, it's called the Citizens Election Fund. As Nicole said, this is the very first election cycle that it's actually being implemented in Howard County, though it's only available for county council and county executive candidates. But, while it is a great step in the right direction, it is not a silver bullet. The system can still be gained because, hypothetically, if developers can't donate more than $250 at a time anymore, they can still get a bunch of their employees to each donate $250, and then it all adds up to a lot. So we, to sort of address some of the shortcomings of the Citizens Election Fund, we launched our own no developer donation campaign pledge, which there are some candidates who are participating in the public finance system, but not willing to sign our pledge. So that to me tells me that there are some, flaws even with the public finance. And then also there's another loophole in that seemingly, my understanding of the program was that for the 4-year election cycle, if you're going to use the public finance system, you can't take any donations greater than $250. You can't take any donations from PACs or businesses or LLCs. But one candidate in Howard County spent the first 3 years of the 4-year election cycle raising several $1,000s from developer interests and some of those impermissible contributor categories. And then in the 4th year of the election cycle, just closed that account and then opened up a new public finance account. So, people can still kind of game the system, double dip. There are these loopholes. And then there's also earlier sabotage attempt by our county executive to really sort of destroy our public finance system that there's a lot of backlash, and luckily they passed an amendment to fix that. So definitely still a work in progress.
Yes, thanks for that information, Jake. And a solid plug for the no developer, no dark money pledge, that is available for county council candidates, county executive, people running for delegates, senators, which they're not currently eligible. The delegate senator is not currently eligible for public financing, but even, they can say like, yeah, I'm not going to accept this money. This is great. And some of them have said, oh, well, we don't deal with, developer related issues at the state level, yet they take a lot of money from them. Oh, what did those developers want? So as someone who was involved in creating the pledge, huge fan, big fan, and hopefully there will be more candidates who sign on to that and who are, dedicated to getting that money out, because in Howard County and not just here, it has a really massive influence and we need to get away from that.
Yeah. Hey, Oscar, do you want to ask your question and then Nicole can move on to the next section?
Yeah, I'm sorry. And in regards to what Jake was talking about, so when businesses or developers, whoever is telling their employees to donate, isn't that part of duress? In other words, it's almost a fraud, isn't it? It's against the law. And so what does that involve the state's attorney? And if so, why aren't they doing something about it? Is it hard to prove? Why is it still going on?
I don't know if Jake wants to answer that, but
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we don't have, or at least I don't have any evidence that definitely is happening. I'm just saying it's a possibility, and it would be within the CEF guidelines by my interpretation anyways.
I think you could, if it's not happening a lot amongst like a large group of employees, it still doesn't mean that it's not happening amongst like higher level ones and people who run an organization. I'll give you an example. So these are donations made by, I actually don't know how to pronounce this, Buck Construction, Carl, Denise, Francis, Michael, all with this construction company,
It's
and
clearly a
donating this way as well.
business, right?
What'd you say?
Maybe it's a family business and they each give.
Right, but also problematic. So, there certainly could be pressure within an organization for employees to donate to certain individuals. That would not be great, likely illegal, but it doesn't mean that it's not happening at higher levels, we'll say, as far as that is concerned. And then certainly CEOs donate, less so when it comes to CFOs, but yeah, good questions. Important to bring that up too. Anything else before I point out one more thing?
Oh, Lori had her hand up.
Okay.
Want to ask?
Oops, sorry. Can you, I want to see who donated to the campaign to, let's see if I can find the repeal sanctuary status in Howard County, Maryland. I think repeal sanctuary status. I'm not sure what the exact name was that people could donate money to, but I think it's repeal sanctuary status in Howard County, Maryland. Can you see who gave money to them? Because it's come up with different names. I think you spelled sanctuary wrong.
Yeah, I missed a letter. So it looks like they've closed this.
Right.
Let's see. And I can look up when that was closed.
All right, that's not there was another name they used.
Okay, well, this is a good segue because what I wanted to do was, if I can go back to the main website. Okay, so we'll go back to the main website real quick. So one of the other things that I wanted to point out before the end of this call. So I've been on this page, the page that links to contributions. But if you wanted to review filed reports, like a full report, and again, that report's going to include a total of the amount of cash that someone has on hand, cash or someone or a group entity, expenditures, contributions, of course, and then transfers and other things. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to view a filed report. And so I don't know. Okay, so that's closed. It's under, maybe was it
I got the name.
53? Oh, what was it?
It's Citizens for a Strong and Safe Howard County.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
So I'll copy this. So I'm very happy to have this example. And then we'll also say that if there's this type of group, but then also if you did want to look up, a particular candidate as well, then you could do that. It will populate. But let's go back to this. All right. And then you just hit search. That's what I do. And then these are all hyperlinked. Amended campaign statement. We will click on this, see what comes up. Okay. So I'm going to scroll down here. So this is the section that is important or has good information, not that the other pages don't, but you'll see, what a committee's prior balance was, receipts, how much contributions they took in, what they spent it on, and then how much cash they have on hand. So this is the report itself, who their treasurer is, chairperson. And then you'll have the different sections that include contributions. Sometimes these are very long documents, but this is where this information is. The search engine itself that I was on for a while, is handy, but sometimes you just want to see everything that went to a particular entity. And then also, bear with me, I'm going to scroll down a ways, try and get to, oh, that was a big dollar amount. $8,000. But I want to get down to like the different sections as far as expenditures. Okay. So other receipts and in-kind contributions. I'm gonna guess this was for potentially, oh yeah, I was gonna say office space. Remarks 30-day office space. But then expenditures. So you can also, there is a link to this, to that main page that we were on. If you just wanted to go to expenditures, search, you know, for a particular entity that might have been, maybe their consulting group, something like that.
Those were the people who did the petition, who went around collecting signatures.
Mhm.
Fascinating that they came out of Georgia.
It's a
Well, this is-
Republican oriented group.
Yeah, this, I mean, this is their address. They well, the address associated with their account anyway.
It reminds me of the people who held that horrible meeting months back. And they were supporting Dan Cox, but they came from out of state.
Mhm. So sometimes, I mean, in expenditures, you'll see the regular stuff there, regular, I say regular meaning like, okay, you purchase stamps and, you know, you're using, you know, paying a fee for a website, that sort of thing. I have seen some of the biggest money, most money when it comes to expenditures spent on consulting services. So like thousands and thousands of dollars.
Nicole,
Yes.
sorry. If you scroll back up to the top, there was somebody's
Yes.
name who donated $6,000 and $500. Are they not allowed to do that? Go down a little bit. You'll see 6,000 right here, Albert Tom, and then Albert Tom has
$50.
$50.
You're correct. They can't do that.
Okay, just making sure I have this.
They should be able to.
Okay.
Again, like, I like to think I know like a lot of things about campaign finance, but you know, did they use some loophole that I'm not aware of? I don't know. But that's it's certainly interesting. When was that? January and then February? Actually, I mean, these are not very far apart. This was what, 9 days? Yeah, good catch.
No.
Good catch. You can also, what is it, up here? I mean, this is a summary. Contributions, this is more of a breakdown. If you just wanted to do like a quick, see like, okay, where's the money? So you've got, you know, field expenses over here. They paid a lot, you know, for people to hand out, or field expenses, I should say, people handing out info.
No, getting petition signatures.
Yes. So this is very fun. Here's another thing I also want to say about pulling a full report like this that's helpful. You might see that someone got a donation from a particular person or an entity. I haven't found a way just within the search engine to see if someone gave that money back. But this is where you would see it. It's usually at the very bottom of a report. Like, did they give any money back? What was this? I don't know what that means. Amended. Oh, this was just a summary of the amendments that they made to their campaign statement. But you'll see information typically at the bottom of someone's report, like if they gave any money back. And sometimes there's nothing there. But everything could be, you know, they're like, yep, this is who I've accepted money from and everything's fine. But of course, sometimes people do, you know, they receive a check from someone and they're like, no, thank you. And then they give it back. But that information is in these full file reports. And we can go back. But if you wanted to, what's another?
Calvin
Can I
Ball.
show the link to the police, Nicole?
Oh, that's right. So what I have not pulled or created a list of all of the different PACs that are registered in Howard County, but Okay. So in Howard County, you've got two different police packs. One is specifically for officers, the other is for supervisors. If you were to just do that in the search engine and not, this is the filed reports page, you'll see donations from both. But do that for them as well. See who they donated to, how much cash they have. I don't know how much cash they have. Okay. We've got like $40,000 at least as of, again, this is what month are we in? We're at the beginning of April. Again, this was filed at the beginning of January, second week of January. How much money has anyone raised since then? We don't know. Because they haven't been required to file that information yet. But, okay, so this looks like a lot of membership dues. That might be what we have most of what's listed here. Yeah, okay. But this is money that this police pack took in. And then, okay, limited expenditures, but at least over that course of time. But if we were to here, we're going to go back to contributions. So these are their donations above $100 in this current election cycle. Again, this is the hard cash. I think.
If I give money to Kittleman, could you go down a little bit more?
We'll see if Kittleman's using
Oh, right. he's
using
using it,
the
yeah.
Citizens Election Fund, so he can't take anyone using public financing / what in Howard County is called the Citizens Election Fund. They can't accept PAC money. So if we were to go back, let's say we wanted to do this between 2015 and the end of 2018. That's what some of that looks like.
Oh, yeah, there he is.
Multiple pages. I mean, you'll see, you know, when I see big donations, maybe donations like $1,000 or more that aren't made during an election year, maybe they're made in an off year. What I then tried to figure out, like, okay, what happened? Was there a piece of legislation that was passed that they really liked? Did something else happen? Are they trying to influence? What are they trying to influence and why that time? That's what I usually ask. But I mean, if we were to just look at, let's say, actually, let's just go beginning of 2018 to end of 2018. That's what that looks like. So yeah, you'll see some big donations made like in the few months leading up to the general election, because like entities want to try and put you over the top. So donations made August, September, October, that sort of thing. So that's that. What other questions can I try and answer?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Nicole, it's almost 20 after, so let's entertain some questions before we wrap up. Just one thing, so I don't forget. Today's presentation is, we're hosting it, Progressive Democrats of Howard County. We're hosting this along with our Revolution Howard County. There is going to be a part 2, and that's going to be in 10 days. It's on a Wednesday evening. We tried to give, like, people could make it on a weekend a chance. People can only make it on a weeknight a chance. But again, it's going to be recorded and we'll put it out on the website. And as soon as this recording is available, we'll make sure everybody knows about it. So I want to thank everybody who did attend today. Thank you so much. Part of the 2 clubs, one of the biggest things that we want to do is we want to educate the community. And so that's why, we try to do things like this. So I'll stop talking and people can ask Nicole their questions.
Thank you, Karen.
So Oscar,
Else, wait, I didn't pull up the chat. I'm not paying enough attention to the chat.
Well,
I'm not
I
paying
keep
enough
getting
attention to the chat.
Yeah, I've got the flash up that people are raising their hands. So like Oscar had his hand up and then we can check the chat.
I see Taya again. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. The LLC transparency law, is it in effect? How does it work? Oh, this is a great question. So there are folks who, even if they know that and have violated the LLC loophole, doesn't mean that they don't try and get around the law. Like, we're just gonna pull up an example. I want to see, let's just, if we were to type in LLCs, we're gonna go for like the big bucks, bigger, I should say. Like, oh, nothing came up. I wonder if it wants me to be more specific. I don't know. It probably does. Okay. Well, it might want me. Let me use Gazoni as an example. See if that comes up with something. Maybe not. So to try and answer that question, might work better if I actually pulled up someone's report. There are still a lot of donations made by LLCs across the state. And one thing that entities will try and do to get around the law and continue donating a lot of money is they'll open an LLC, they'll make a donation from that, and then they'll close that LLC. Or they'll still have, they'll donate under something that's officially an LLC. Then they've got something else that's incorporated. Then they've got a different business name that doesn't have an LLC or anything else. Then they've got something else. Then their daughter is the resident agent of a different LLC. That's still happening. Let me see if I can. I think it just wants me to be more specific. It just wants more search terms. I think it's just not liking me right now. Okay, well, I hope that answers part of that question. It's still definitely an issue. Donation. So you might have a name of an LLC that's really apparent, like, Kurt Russell, so random, LLC. Well, whose LLC is that? Oh, maybe it's Kurt Russell's. You still need to check, because, some people are crafty and it might actually be something completely different that's not associated with the Kurt Russell. But you still have a lot of different LLCs donating under names like, a wooden spoon LLC, or just something you just don't know what it is. And it's still very hard to track. Some of the names are just clearer than others and some of them aren't, but it's still an issue. People still figure out a way. If they want to get money to elected officials a whole bunch of different ways, unfortunately, in the absence of a candidate choosing public financing, if that's an option, then they still find a way. But we're working on it. We're gonna make sure it doesn't happen. Hope that's helpful. Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Oscar,
Great
you want to ask
question.
your question?
I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong button.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
Any other questions
Good.
for Nicole?
Oops, not that one. Hold on. I think the search engine was just, let me see if I can pull up. What does it?
So I've been looking for that statement from the Board of Elections on sort of how they rationalize all of these people being able to donate so much over the state spending limits. And what they said here was, they said, a person may not make a contribution in excess of $4,000 to a political committee during the election cycle. See election law article, and they cite the law. However, recent litigation has questioned the application and enforcement of the aggregate contribution limits by a person in an election cycle. The Supreme Court recently held in McCutcheon versus FEC that aggregate contribution limits are invalid under the First Amendment. And yeah, I won't read the whole thing, but that just appears to be for aggregate limits, I guess, not limits to just one person or committee. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful information. I mean, part of why I wanted to do this is to make sure that people can find the information. And if someone did donate $10,000, that information gets out there, and the questions need to be asked. Right now, $6,000 is legal, and there might be people who disagree or think that that's way too much, that should be allowed. And I think no matter what, people need to know what's going on to the extent possible, to the extent that this information is there to find and to know where to find it. Like I desperately want everyone to know that this resource exists. So this is public information, and let's start using it. Like, let's start accessing it. Let's start talking about it. Let's start asking elected officials about it. Some of them hate being asked, like, hey, like, you got a $6,000 donation from this entity. Like, what did that get them? What does that get them versus what my $10 donation does? What does that mean? And they need to answer those questions. So that's why I'm doing this. It's such pivotal information. It's public information, and I want people to know what that is, and then to keep talking about it, keep asking questions about it, and hopefully, build enough support to pass more legislation that makes it more difficult for people to really abuse the process. Like your $10 donation, or you don't even have to donate. That means something, and it should, someone's much higher donation or power, should not supersede that power to the people.
So Lou has her hand up, or his hand up. I can't tell. So if I got that wrong, I apologize. But
A guy.
Yay! Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, ask your question.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this. My question is for the people who are for the Board of Elections. Is there a way that they can be bribed in all of this? Because this seems to be, because I have a hard time believing that they are understaffed. It's like, if they want to find discrepancies, they can quote unquote find discrepancies. Do you think that they're being bribed in some place? Like, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. Is it like, I guess, how do they get into these positions of power that they're able to regulate how elections are financed and run?
Well, I don't, it's a great question as far as like what's happening there. I don't know. But I mean, we also have to keep in mind that these are state employees, and they're, I'm not trying to excuse anything that may or may not be happening there, because I don't know what that is. But I'm sure being a state, a public employee, You know, they probably get a certain amount of pressure at the state level. What that is, I don't know. I think that actually Linda Lamone with the State Board of Elections has quite a lot of autonomy, probably more so than Governor Larry Hogan would like. But as far as, you know, what else is happening there, I just don't know. I don't. I think that it certainly could be a in any state, anywhere, be a strategic move to understaff any department or any entity, you know, if they wanted to. Is that happening here? I don't know. So, you know, it's certainly something that I wish that I knew more about and understand, and then go from there. I wish that the responses I've received back from the State Board of Elections thus far and me sharing information with them were more of the nature of they were, you know, interested in the information that I gave them, and you know, had maybe other questions for me, or just something other than like, we've received your complaint, which is essentially what their response was, like, we've received your complaint. And they called it a complaint. I'm like, I'm just giving you information. Like, I don't know. So that answer is a question mark for me.
So what happened after they received your complaint? I mean, where is it now?
I responded and asked what happens next. And that was at least a couple weeks ago, and I did nothing. So.
Okay, guys, it's 4:31. I want to thank everybody. I'm going to hit stop recording.